Going well. I'd like to have the interpreter take a minute to explain how to access the interpretation system.
Good morning. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon world and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, in other words, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, 3 dots, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, es decir, el globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés, en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, es decir, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. Francesca, can you confirm that we have a quorum?
Thank you, Chair. We do have a quorum this morning.
Okay, and then for the record, we'll just note that committee members Wong, Nickerson, and Dorsey are absent today. The other committee members are present. With that, would you please join me in the pledge? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Okay, and just for everyone's information, for the purposes of comment today, on the regular items, all the reports and item number 1, we will be doing 2 minutes, and on items for public comment and items 2 and 3, we will have 1 minute for public comment. With that, we will go into item number 1, which is non-agenda public comments and member comments. Francesca, do we have any public comments?
Thank you, Chair. We do have one public comment. The original draw. You can go ahead when you're ready.
Hey, guys. Hopefully you've had good holidays and whatnot. But I guess it'll be interesting to see how this year goes, even though it's really not the new year. That's on April 1st. That's why they call it April Fool's Day. But, you know, it'll be interesting to see the fraud, waste, and abuse that comes down the pipe from SANDAG, because that's pretty much what they're engaged in, you guys. And but I think that many times it's never really exposed all of this stuff, and you look at certain things and not all of it. And sometimes, you know, it takes time for things to come out because, I mean, whatever, it's early and I haven't had anything, my coffee. But when it takes, you know, an article in the paper to have you guys bring stuff up, it just really doesn't look good. So hopefully, you know, there's not going to be more of that coming out, or maybe hopefully it is, so that it will actually be worked on and something will be done about it. But yeah, so it'll be definitely an interesting year. So good luck, you guys.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Do we have any member comments? Nope. And Ray, I think there's a time if you have anything to say from the director. Okay. Okay. No, that's good. With that, we will move on to the number 2, which is the Office of the Independent Performance Auditor activities, and Courtney.
Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. It's really wonderful to be here with you all and starting off the year. So last month I was just sliding into the seat. Now I've had more time to wrap my hands around not everything, but certainly a lot more. So the activities for myself and my team have really included continuing our audit work, and we'll talk about that when we move through the revisions on the audit plan. We're also engaged in an investigation of SR 125. We've been looking at staffing analysis. We are presenting today a request for an associate administrative analyst. And we're also just catching up on activities that have occurred in the past. So really not only what's on our plate, but also looking backwards and getting my hands around some of those reports. So what you would anticipate for getting up to speed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on number 2?
Thank you, Chair. We have one, the original draw. You can go ahead.
So I guess I just have a question. We're looking into the 125, but what about the I-15 toll road and all of that? I mean, before it was mentioned that they had been combined as far as looking into both of them, but you only talk about one, and it's just concerning that other people have had issues with both of them. And, you know, I just think it's really important that we cover all of that because, you know, everybody deserves, I mean, because the problem is that when you guys find something is wrong with the cameras, you'll go and fix it because it's you're losing money. But if it's coming out of other people's pockets, it doesn't seem like it gets, you know, handled as quickly. So I'm just curious as to know why we're only looking at one side of it when it should be both of them independently as well. Because just because people go on both of them that have the same car, you should still be independently looking at the tolls separate.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Relative to the public comment speaker, my recollection, which could entirely be incorrect, is that a lot of the systems are the same. And so by looking at 125, we may be evaluating some of the same software systems, or maybe staff could answer that.
That's true. The 125 is where the software system resides. The two systems run using the same backend system, which is where the errors were that people are referring to. And so we are looking at both of them at the same time. The difference is that one of them, the 125, is a toll road, so everyone who goes through there is charged, and the other one, which is the I-15, is a carpool and managed lane, and so it's charged differently. But most of the problems are with the 125 because it has the bulk of the people who use that who are being charged. But we're looking at both of those.
Thanks. And just to clarify again, they use the same both, as you said, both back office. So
It's the same back office system.
by analyzing how that's working, we should be able to get some information on the 15's results too, then, right? Okay, thanks. Board member comments, questions? Oh, wait. I don't know. Did you want to say something?
I do. I want
Courtney?
to clarify.
Yeah,
So
perfect.
in relation to the investigation, we're looking at SR 125. I want to be sure that members and the public understand an investigation is narrowly scoped. And when we look at the systems, and I think that Ray can speak more to that while they are toll road operations, I think there are distinct differences, and our investigation is focused on SR 125.
Okay, that sounds good. And I think again, some of the concerns of I've heard about 15 is actually people not being appropriately told because you don't know if they're actually a carpool or not. So it's actually benefiting more likely people than harming them. But okay, thanks for the update. With that, any other board member comments or questions on this item? We will move on to item number 3, which is the consent, and approval of the meeting minutes is the only thing on there. Francesca, do we have public comment?
We do. Thank you. The original draw. You can go ahead.
So again, this is regarding the toll roads because this is what you were having on that meeting. I think it needs to be more clear for the people and for you guys because you just kind of confused my question until she said that her investigation was only on that one. I understand that they're different, but people have been having issues on the 15 where they're being overcharged as well. So even if you guys are thinking that we're the ones benefiting because we might get a free whatever, there still are people that are being overcharged. So it's something that, and if they're two different things, I feel like you need to be doing an investigation then independently on the 15 if you're not going to, even though the system may be in the back office may be the same, but because they are two different variations of a, charging to drive on, to whatever it, that they should be looked at, both of them. So I don't know if you can do that after you do the 125, but I think it would probably behoove you to do it just to make sure everything is good.
Okay, any board member comments on the minutes?
I would move approval.
Motion by Drucker,
I second.
second by Pickney Forrest. I'll make one comment, which is just for the purpose of the future. This is not meant to be said in any disparaging way whatsoever, but we should probably note that committee member Dorsey is acting as a primary as opposed to an actual primary. She was appointed as an alternate and will just be clearly acting as a primary until we take some sort of action, because she is the alternate that's filling the spot that was never occupied by who was supposed to be in that spot. So I just think for the accuracy of the minutes, that would be useful in the future. With that, call for the vote. That motion passes unanimously with members Dorsey and Nickerson absent. Wong Nickerson absent. That should be. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item number 4, the reports section. The first item in the reports is a review of discussion of SANDAG Board Policy 39. I'll start off by making some introductory comments. This is an item that's been going on for a while, and unfortunately, a couple of our new members are missing, but since we have one of them here, I just want to provide some history. And so we go back, which is there were originally, before my time on the audit committee, some recommendations made to modify board policy 39, specifically the recommendations at that point that were made by the audit committee were that the public member terms be moved to 4 years with a 2 consecutive term max, and that it be required that either the chair or the vice chair be a public member. Those were taken to the board and discussed at the June 2021 meeting, and they were not accepted. So the board chose not to accept those recommendations. Later on, the audit committee took up the topic again, because again, we felt like there were some even more evidence for reasons for potentially suggesting some changes. That was making recommendations around, again, the term length of the public members, as well as the leadership appointments. And a lot of this is around trying to ensure some continuity and knowledge maintaining across this. One example was this past year, it could have been entirely possible that we would have lost all 3 public members, both the board members and the IPA, within about a 3-month period of each other based upon timings. And so we just didn't feel like that would be helpful for the committee, and that we should have more institutional knowledge maintained. So that was behind the recommendation of staggering some of the public member terms, as well as a lot of the information that we've received is that, from my own personal experience, it takes a while to come up to speed with SANDAG. And so a 2-year term, if someone comes in, a lot of times the first year, they're just getting up to speed, and they're only being productive for a year a lot of times. And so having a 3-year term seemed more suitable. The board, as I said, the first go round rejected the 4-year term. So we decided that maybe they would be more amenable to a 3-year term. So that was approved by the audit committee. The recommendations that you see before you was approved by the audit committee in November of 2022. They were taken up by the executive committee in March of 2023. where the executive committee said, we'll consider this, but we want to do it in the context of all of the other board policy updates, which were then looked at in November of 2023. And at that point in time, the executive committee said, well, we have a new IPA and maybe it'd be useful. And we also have new committee members, although unfortunately a couple are missing today, or at least Rowena is missing today, new committee members, and let them have some input on this as well before we come back and make a final decision. So the request was to have Courtney go off and look at this and provide some input. As part of that, she did decide that a couple updates would be helpful. And I've talked to her with a little bit about this. And then because of that, she wanted to bring it back to the audit committee to review and make some, give any comment or input or make some recommendations based upon that before it goes back to the executive committee. So that's a summary. I do think after that, before we get into discussion, I'll let Courtney speak as well, but I do want to take the public comment. So can we have public comment on this item first?
We have no public comment on this item.
No public comment. So Courtney, maybe you would like to talk about what you did.
Thank you, Chair. So
My apologies, Chair. A hand did just go up. If we could take that comment just so we don't skip over them.
Sure.
Thank you. The original draw. You can.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I couldn't click the thing in time. I think that it's good that you're going over this. It's just sometimes it's, the fact that you guys have so much control over, what happens and all of this stuff. Like, I feel like sometimes, it can get muddied with, other board members, like the board of directors or whatever, deciding not to accept like a 4-year term when, sometimes you do need to be in a place longer, but at the same time, it can make it so that you could be in a place where you don't necessarily, things aren't working out with a person, and then you're kind of stuck with them still for that period of time. But, I think a lot of stuff goes wrong because you'll have somebody in for a little bit and then you do have to switch it and nobody's really knowledgeable about it. And so everything just and nothing is fluid. So, I guess the longer that you guys can spend time in there to know about what's going on is better than, less time.
That concludes the public comments.
Okay. With that, Courtney, why don't you talk about what you found?
Thank you, Chair. The bulk of what I did was really just to acquaint myself with the changes that were made and then look at what other shops were doing to just ensure that what we were proposing here made sense and there wasn't any value add that I wanted to bring in relation to other practices. And the chair and I discussed that as well. So you will see in the packet that the red line version is the version that was presented to executive committee, and that is when the executive committee requested that I review it. And then the blue line changes in here are the things that we addressed. For example, I really saw that there was value in bringing an outside government expert. So we added that in for your consideration today. It is very important that we have more people as we're going through the selection process, involved in it and bringing outside perspectives. So we thought this was good. This would be a process where an outside financial expert would be selected as stated in here, and then that they would go for board approval. And that also brings more of a financial bench to the audit committee to have more people understanding what we do and also maybe interested in the future in serving or knowing more candidates. So I think there's a benefit of both the need to have the technical expert as well as the future of having more people be aware of the audit committee. So I would say that that was my main process.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and just providing a little bit more context then too, just to note, I mean, you had shared with me that Some of the agencies that you looked at when you looked at this were Humboldt County, Butte County, City of Modesto, Cal State University, and the City of San Diego. And so just to put that out there, so people understand that these are agencies that you looked at, and it seems like having an outside independent expert was the main thing that was brought in. One of the other adjustments that was made to give a little bit more context was we had made a recommendation that an alternate be appointed, even though the board policy hadn't been updated. Clearly, the board heard us because they did in this last round go ahead and appoint an alternate, but we just updated the language so it could be obvious that the alternate could either be a new member or a previously serving board member, as opposed to just having, necessarily favoring a previously serving board member. And then, so just going over for the people that are new again, the general updates are the public member selection process to change it to being what's described in that in the document. The objectives there being to try to create some more independence and also adding some more length to the term to take advantage of the knowledge that's learned, and then also having an alternate present for the public members, because we do have an alternate present for the board members as well. The public member term limits and staggering of terms, I talked about that already a little bit. And then last was the appointment of the chair and the vice chair. I can tell you that just based upon the feelings I'm getting from talking to board leadership, I do not expect that they will accept the recommendation for the appointment of the chair. It seems like they didn't accept what was requested last time. And because of that, I went and when Courtney did the research, I asked her to look into the agencies, their mechanisms as well, and of the agencies that I listed. And then also, if you look at the Port of San Diego, none of those agencies actually have the committee select their chair. They are appointed by the overseeing board or assigned by the overseeing agency. And given that, combined with the fact that all of the other policy advisory committees in SANDAG have the chair appoint the chair of the policy advisory committees, I don't have a lot of hope for this one being accepted. So I think, the committee may want to discuss if we want to keep that recommendation, if we think it's important. It was a key item for the previous independent performance auditor, because she definitely had some contention issues with one of the previous chairs on the committee. So she was liking that recommendation, but we might get more attention and agreement with some of our other recommendations if we don't have one that is quite so contentious to start off with as well. So given that, open it up for discussion and thoughts. Yes, Shanae.
If I may, I'd like to request to postpone this item, considering that 2 of the 3 public members are absent, and this is a matter that is of importance as it relates to the selection of the audit committee members, where we are a majority. So it feels a little premature to have the discussion with the 2 members absent.
Yes, and I wasn't aware that Ms. Dorsey wasn't going to be here today. Agnes has given input before, so I was more comfortable, and she was supportive of the previous recommendations. But I'm thinking, I don't know, we should have space on our February agenda if we want to delay this till February.
I believe
I'm
you do,
guessing,
Chair.
yes. Okay. Any other comments or input?
More than happy to agree to the postponement. I think, if Ed or I could chime in also, just to give feedback so that on February, we can get this adopted. First of all, I think the concept of a 3-year term for the public members makes sense, because then it can rotate and one new member can come off be added in every year rather than having the 2 years. The selection process makes sense, that it be more organized rather than just kind of a random effort, shall we say. The final thing is, I would suggest that we not approach the executive committee about changing the chair. The selection process. Yeah, I think that would make, I think we have a much better chance of getting everything else through. So I would suggest that we remove that and continue on with the way it is right now.
Okay, Ed?
Yeah, I would just offer that, and agreeing very much with your proposal that a lot of our cities will be making new committee assignments this month. So postponing this till February might be a little more comfortable for some of those members that are just coming on board to the general board.
Okay, yeah, well, I don't know when we'll get this scheduled. My belief is that once the audit committee takes action, it would be scheduled for some future executive committee action. And then after that, it would actually presumably go to the board, presuming the executive committee lets it go to the board. So, I can be presuming your mayor gets reassigned, we can go twist her arm at least. But, okay, so with that, why don't we go ahead and take this up in February again? And I'll give Johnny more time to think about it too, and give us some honest feedback, which is good. Excellent. With that, we will go ahead and move on to item 5, which I'll just introduce briefly again and let Courtney take it over. I mean, we had a similar item, which just for the new members' information was previously approved by the audit committee, which was to request the addition of an administrative help on in the office of the independent performance auditor. It was unanimously approved by the audit committee last year as part of talking with Courtney about just the needs going forward. Her intent was to come forward with the whole staffing view. But as you might expect, it takes a little while to develop that. But as part of that, what she did do is identify and more fully flesh out what this person's role could be. And so we thought it'd be useful to bring that back just for the purpose of getting a little bit more detail behind this role. Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is such a critical position, and I'm really appreciative of what the former IPA did in putting together the request and then the thoughtful conversation that the board had in October around this, that the committee had. So when we look, it's very good to be able to sit in the seat for a little bit and to see how things are working and where we could benefit and where there's greater need to really increase our impact and our effectiveness. And then also from my past executive experience and what I've been able to accomplish with the right balance of administrative and technical professional staff. So this was previously presented in October as an administrative position. It became clear in doing the analysis and seeing everything that the staff was doing and everything that we have on our plates and wanting to accomplish so that we can really bring the best to the organization and to the audit committee and the public. So I am recommending here that we have a administrative analytical position and that they would bring this would address the current administrative duties that staff is doing right now. So we have technical professionals performing administrative duties, and that is taking them away from our audit and investigation responsibilities. It would increase our productivity. So just to give you a general sense, one of our associates is spending at times about 50% of her time on administrative items, and that is a real hit to our work. And when I say administrative items, that is from agenda setting all the way to minutes, to report processing. And I think a lot of times in an audit shop, people don't see behind the scenes in really what it takes to deliver an audit report. And we have a commitment that we deliver an audit report that is concise and impactful and accessible. And that takes talent to do that. And I've been fortunate in my past to really have exceptional administrative analytical people supporting the audit team. So this position as presented here would address that, as it's in the memo, minutes, agenda setting, meetings, meeting coordination, calendar setting, right? Report template, proofreading. But there's also this whole piece that really takes us to the next level as an audit shop and what our peers are doing. So when we look at the, I I want to get the lingo right here, on the CAP, the corrective action plan, which is audit recommendations or investigation recommendations. It is standard to have that dashboard on the website so that you are able to access it at any time that we update it. You're able to see the management's response. It's a tool for the public, for management, for us. It adds the level of transparency and accountability that an audit shop of our caliber should be doing. So this position would be responsible or in working with me for the development and implementation of that on the website. This position would also be responsible for the website. And so again, we'll be looking with a critical eye at the website to say, how can we provide more information, make sure that what we have out there is accessible. This position would also be helping, we're going to talk when we get to the annual audit plan revisions about the whistleblower program. I am a firm believer in a strong whistleblower program. And if people don't know what the whistleblower program is, in particular, the employees, because they are our eyes and ears in the organization, they know what's working and they know what's not working. So we have to have the outreach and education to the employees in order to make sure that they feel comfortable and know if there's something that they're concerned about, that they have a safe and confidential and can also anonymous, if desired, place to go. This position would be responsible for assisting us in that outreach, making sure that we are saturating the employees with enough education. That can in time extend out further with contractors because of our incredible amount of contracting dollars that we deal with, that is a risk that we want to make sure that we inform, that we have a channel for those complaints to come in as well. So we talked last time and you all approved the independent legal counsel. So an RFP, given everything that's on my plate right now, I don't know when I would get to that. And so again, it is these critical pieces that we need it right now, but I don't have the capacity in order to develop and execute on that. A position like this would be able to do that and in concert with me, then be able to manage the progress of the contractor, holding them, making sure that we're getting the deliverables and everything. So I believe it's going to be a fabulous resource. I think that everyone will see and feel the results of this. I think I covered all the main points in the memo. We did include a draft job description attached. I'm not going to go through it unless you would like me to. I'm happy to take questions. I know that we are missing 2 public members today, and I am requesting the immediacy of this approval.
Thank you. Do we have any public member comments?
Thank you. We do have one public comment. The original draw, you can go ahead.
I like you, Courtney, because I feel like you seem like you really want things to get better. So I appreciate that. And I think a whistleblower program is extremely important. My concern is that when the toll roads got exposed, supposedly Lauren Warren got fired because of exposing that. So, it's really important that you make a place for the people to come in and share the things, because we need transparency. The people need it. And even having that dashboard up, I think, is important. Because so many times there isn't transparency in what is going on, and it leaves the public in the dark. And then things like, an article will come out and it's exposing you guys, and then you kind of get concerned about that because, you didn't know about it in time. But, the concern too is that if, Lauren was going and whistleblowing about this and was later terminated, but then they're saying it's not because of that. We just need to make sure that people aren't going to be retaliated against because otherwise, even with that just happening, what would make anybody at this point want to come forward, even if you told them that wouldn't happen? Because, I don't know, it's a little concerning, but I do like the way that you talk about wanting to do all of this stuff. And I think that adding somebody to the staff is important, because you shouldn't be wasting your time on the administrative process, because then it does take away from your ability to provide the audit. And I know that there's tons of stuff in there that should be being looked at So whatever you can do to make sure that it gets done in a timely manner and you're not wasting time on things that somebody else can take care of that, you know, your auditors don't need to be working on. So I appreciate you working on this.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Are there any board member comments or questions or committee member? Yes, Shani?
I
Shanae.
am in support of this request. Being an auditor, I am very grateful for the administrative assistance that I've had past and present. It may not seem consequential, but having that extra resource allows the auditors to truly focus on the content itself. There's a lot of documentation and checking and evidentiary processes that happen, and having that cleared from an auditor's mind is of great importance. And so I just wanted to, on the record, say that I'm in support of this request.
Yeah, so is there budget for this, Ray?
That's a good question. So, you know, when we take a look at our staffing budget and we're taking a look out a couple of years in terms of what our potential revenue is, we're extremely tight on positions. We talked about this at length yesterday with our management team. But with that said, this position I feel is critical for the overall efficient functioning of the independent office of the auditor. So I would say that we will figure out how to fund this position, but it's not in the budget, but we will figure out how to fund it.
So follow-up question for Courtney, how quickly can we get this person on?
Well, thank you for that question. The job description is ready, and I have already met and discussed this with Melissa, so she is aware. So it really will be Melissa Kova, the Director of Strategic Operations. It really will be working with management to see how quickly we can get this advertised. If we could get it out next week, I will be thrilled. And then it's going to be a recruitment process to go through the candidates. But I think it's an attractive position.
So the reason I've asked those is to make sure that we are not approving something that's never going to go anywhere. But this makes a whole lot of sense. The sense of it is if 50% of one person's time is being used on this, it makes no sense. You know, even if you were to get a part-time person, a half-time person, sharing with other department or something like that, that would make sense. But to have a full-time probably makes sense at this point to get some other things done. So thank you for bringing this back, and let's get this going.
Anybody else? Yeah, with that, it is, since we are updating the position description and the roles, it is an action item. So I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Forwarding this request, moved by Drucker, second by
Second.
Shanae. Just one other question then from the perspective of discussion on this topic, that, I mean, just for information, this is why I've been, you know, not that Courtney doesn't have enough to do, but pushing her to come up with just discussions around staffing, because we will soon be in the heavy discussions around budget for next year, even though the budget doesn't get adopted till July 1st. So hopefully the budget for next year can be evaluated and looked at that. Just Ray, relative to your comment about the tightness, probably something I should have asked before, but I seem to recall that recently there were additional funds that came in that were allocated at the board level over the next 10 years to the tune of like $650 million to various projects. I'm assuming those funds also include allocations to overhead and management and that kind of stuff. Is that correct, as part of those projects?
Most of those monies are for capital projects.
Yeah.
And there are positions, for instance, the engineering positions that we can fund from that.
Right.
But typically, we end up absorbing things like the HR function to hire those engineers.
Right.
We would absorb that. So those are the things we're looking at, because
Okay.
not all of those funding sources would allow us to hire overhead positions.
Okay.
But the work is coming in. So those were the discussions we were having yesterday. So,
Okay, yeah, that's good, because it's areas like that I definitely want us to poke into, because if you're going to do another $700 million worth of work, it'd be nice to be able to audit that, as well as hire for it, as you said.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, great, thanks. Did you want to add another comment, Courtney? Yeah, go ahead.
Chair, I just wanted to add on what you had stated. So ideally, I would have been bringing administrative and audit staffing needs at the same time, and instead focused on this and fully developed this. But my intention is in February that we will bring a staffing analysis in front of you, so that we'll be able to have that discussion further about what the technical staff needs are.
Great, thank you. With that, we have a motion. I'll call for the vote in a second. That motion passes unanimously with committee members Dorsey and Wong Nickerson absent. We will now move on to item number 6, which is proposed revisions to the audit plan. And I will just let Courtney take this one and not do any introductory comments. Courtney.
Thank you very much, Chair. First, I just want to acknowledge the work of the former IPA and her work on the audit plan that was presented in June and passed by the audit committee and then forwarded on to the board. It is in any position coming in new, it's a great opportunity to now be able to review it again with a limited knowledge of being in a month, however, or 2 months. However, drilling down on things with the team, seeing where we are, seeing the impacts as we just talked about with the administrative impacts on the team, acknowledging that anytime you're transitioning a leader position, there are things that change. So as I get into the depths of the revisions, we'll be talking about revisions to some of the audit plans ahead and why that was done. And because now I have information that Mary didn't have. I know where we are halfway into the year and some of the challenges that we've experienced. So the board policy does allow for the reviewing of, and it should be done on a quarterly basis. And then if needed, revisions are presented. So what you will see at a summary level in here is that I am revising one of the goals. We'll talk about that with my focus on the hotline, the fraud, waste, and abuse. I'm moving out one of the previous goals and implementing one of those. We're looking to the contracts audit that was done by the team and in 2 parts. And then the next series was a series of 10 audits to look at the invoice and payments. So the team and I have met. I've made some scoping changes in relation to that the team is implementing, and I'll talk about that when I get to the hours. So, and then the last item was the SR 125 audit, investigation, and I'll talk about that in more detail, the impacts on the annual plan. So when you get into your packet, you will see a red line version of the changes to the audit plan. You're going to see some edits that I'm not going to talk about. However, if you want to, if you have any questions about the particular edits, let me know. And it's not pulling up for me. Okay. Don't know why. Okay. So when you go to page 28, you will see on the redlined version, I am removing the former goal 3. And what I saw, this was really an opportunity for OIPA to look at HR hiring and retention. And my feelings about this is if we determine in the risk assessment that hiring and retention practices are a high risk, then we certainly can develop an audit to the specificity of that. But that it is more important from a programmatic level to build a robust hotline program, whistleblower program. So I have then implemented, as you'll see, And I've changed some of the priority levels to that the OIPA has always investigated fraud, waste, and abuse. So I just want to make sure that the public knows that this is not a change in services, but it is an emphasis. So this is what it does. We know that when there is a robust fraud, waste, and abuse and mismanagement program, it is designed to deter, and it will deter from bad actors doing things that they shouldn't be doing, as well as it will lead us to the detection. And it is proven that if we detect early, we reduce losses to the organization, which is what we want to do. So you'll see the actions is from prioritizing is make sure that we're delivering timely investigations. And I am also, from my standpoint, investigations that are significant will be issued in a report. So there is 2 reporting mechanisms that I'm proposing here. One is a formal reporting mechanism. One is a less formal reporting mechanism that is not captured in here. But the formal is that we would change to an annual fraud, waste, and abuse hotline report that would be produced. That report you would get, it would list out the actions taken and the outcomes of every investigation we do in a synopsis, similar to what the former IPA did. And it'll show you the stats of where we are. The more significant investigations, such as the one for SR 125, an audit report will be issued. So while it will be mentioned in the annual report, you will also have a full-on standalone report, investigation report. That will go the same process as our audits do. It will be posted on a website. There will be recommendations to management. Management will respond. That will be incorporated into our dashboard. So that is definitely a strategic goal change here. The rest that you see in red line there is just edits. When we come to page 3 of 7, we have a change in budgeted versus actual hours per engagement. So collectively, Lloyd and I have been auditing for, what did we say, 50 years? Budgeting hours is one of the trickiest things that any audit shop does. So while having the opportunity to look at where we are on certain audits and change my projections, there's also the realism of that it is hard to get solid budgeting hours. So I did reduce the on target to 70% and the exceeds to 80%, because there is not an audit shop that exists that doesn't have challenges with budgeting hours, because you don't know what you're going to come across at times, or you modify the scope. And we'll talk about a scope modification that I did for the contracts, the invoice and payment audits with the team. So I think it's a reasonable goal. I want to acknowledge I'm fully aware that I'm reducing the numbers and that this is something that I'm evaluated on. So it could appear self-serving, but it's not intended to be self-serving. It's intended to be realistic. Okay. On page 4 of 7, these are all what I would consider edits. I've already stated that fraud, waste, and abuse to me is not enough. Having run hotlines for as long as I have, mismanagement is definitely a part of the equation. And a lot of times something can look like someone is a bad actor, and it just turns out to be mismanagement, very, very poor management. So I wanted to incorporate that in our languaging here. On page 5 of 7, the one thing I did change here was making the annual reporting. Anytime we have to stop and report out, and the previous plan was quarterly, it sucks up hours. So I want to bring a robust auditing and investigation department to you. So I did reduce it to, not reduce it, I increased it to annually, because I believe that is an appropriate amount to have an annual report, as long as significant investigations are being reported out in standalone reports. And then what I'm suggesting, and want to hear your feedback, is that at the mid-mark, at the 6-month mark, I would just provide a summary operational report to you, that this is how it's going as we're relaunching this in a more robust fashion. These are kind of based on our our efforts. These are the increase in reports we've seen, or maybe we won't be seeing increases, and then we'll be scratching our heads being like, how do we penetrate people to, do they not feel comfortable or confident? So kind of that process. And we will include, I will probably, we can talk about this, speak verbally about the trends that we're seeing more in verbal terms of like if we're seeing employee timesheet fraud or we're seeing contractor issue, and then save the formal synopsis for the annual report. So that's what I'm proposing, is that a summary operational level report come to you semi-annually, and then a formal whistleblower report, annual report come to you annually. When we turn to page 6 of 7, so this was really about rolling up our sleeves and saying realistically, where are we in this process? And what does it look like? So it was determined after the contracts and procurement audit that 10 separate contractors, the top 10 that were identified in the formal ones, would be looked at in more detail. And that we would complete that all this year. So based on what we're seeing and with getting information, performing the audit testing, as well as some of the load on the administrative duties and on the job training for some of the auditors, that what I am recommending is that we reduce that 10 to 5. We are out of the gate. We are doing a heavy dive into the first one that we're doing, and that will include, just to give you a sense, so that just to look at one includes reviewing approximately 7 task orders and amendments, 70 task orders and amendments combined. So it's not a small lift. It should bring more impactful information. It will also inform the process going forward. So this is the first one out of the 5 that will be completed this year. The next 4 will templatize that, and we will include that template to do the next 4 audits in this fiscal year. That will also inform the next 5 that we do in the next fiscal year. So there'll be more information to come on that, but that's the approach that we're doing. So you're seeing an increase in hours, but a decrease in delivery. And that is because that's the realistically what I believe where we're standing right now in order to issue the 5 and also to realign the scope from what the previous IPA's desires are to now working with the team and saying, I'd like us to go in this direction. I think that it will accomplish much of what the former IPA wanted, but in a different manner. So that is that item. The rest is more cleanup of addressing the changes in budgeted hours for 2 audits that have previously been released. And then when we get to the bottom, we talk about the special requests and investigations, and you will see that that has now been moved up to 1,800 hours. Again, with the emphasis on investigations and being in the midst of a significant investigation with SR 125. So SR 125 could take 1,000 hours. Do I know if we will? I don't know if we will, but there is multiple pieces to this, and I incorporate that in it. If we don't use those hours for SR 125, it certainly will be used for other areas in relation to making sure that we are getting employees and others to report areas for us to investigate. But just talking about SR 125, it is approximately 1,000 hours. We also have consultant support on this for a forensic consulting firm as well. So there are resources outside of the staff. And this also, when I talk about staffing structure next month, you'll see more of the investigation wing and then the audit services wing of OIPA. And I can take more specific questions about that. So then we see a change in hours of 7,300. And really, to make sense of that, you want to tie out to the last page of the annual work plan, which when you're looking at this, if you look at the fourth column in, you'll see that we have 5,500 in an annual year, we have 5,500 hours available for direct audit services. And next year, I will call this out more specifically, but investigations are included in the third column. And I've made modifications there. So one of our principal auditors spends the majority of his time in investigation. So I have shifted his hours there, but he was doing audit work previously. So this ties out with the previous plan. I'm happy to take specific questions or go into more detail where you would like me to be. I can speak in broad terms. When it comes to SR 125, it is not typical for us to talk about specific investigation objectives. So broadly, we can say that we want to understand what the accounting of SR 125 and whether it's appropriate. There has been discussion about customer account errors. We want to look at what SANDAG is doing in relation to those customer errors and whether we'll be able to fully determine this or not, but if all the customer errors have been isolated, I don't know that we'll be able to formally, but I think that we'll be able to look at the systems in place and be able to understand that. And then lastly, we'll be looking at contracting relationships and how that played into this.
Thank you for the update and all the detail. Francesca, do we have any public comment?
Thank you. We do have one public comment. The original draw. You can go ahead.
So I think that it's good that you would like to take all of the time that you are on the SR 125, because I think it is very important to be looking at this. What I wonder is when you're doing your hours, are those, because you were talking about how a lot of staff and the previous item was bringing in another person or more staff to take care of the administrative process. Is the hours that you're talking about here, how much that will take? Are you considering, like, are you making it so that whoever is working on the administrative staff would then be pulled over to this? Or is this still considered that you don't have this person, and so there will be, it could take potentially longer because you'll have people working on other things? So that's what I'm curious about. But then also with the standalone reports that you were talking about, I know you wanted to do quarterly, you're doing annual reporting and then you're doing a summary operational reports, but then you were talking about standalone reports. So whenever you're finishing one of the audits, are you saying that you're going to have like a report that stands alone and it's going to go on the dashboard right away? Or is it that we're just going to have to wait for your summary or the annual report to come out to find out what's going on? I think that if you're doing standalone reports that could go up there, then you don't have to have everything, available to the people, but that way it kind of keeps people, everything's transparent so people can go and look and see what you're doing and how much you have accomplished during that time. And then I also would like to ask about the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline. If somebody is whistleblowing, can they do that without exposing who they are? Or is it something where you're going to need to know who they are and what like more about them in order to look into auditing whatever it is that they have asked you to audit?
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Since I do think it's an opportunity to advertise this capability, I do think it's worth Courtney addressing the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline question, because I do think it's an important function, and this is an opportunity to talk a little bit more about it. But my understanding is these people, when they submit issues, are well protected, but maybe you could talk about it.
Thank you, Chair. The fraud, waste, and abuse hotline, you can be anonymous or you can choose to reveal your identity. and you will be protected. So I have always operated a hotline where both is possible. In fact, I took legislation to the state and had it passed when I was city auditor of Oakland to ensure that employees could come in and sit in my office and tell me what was going on and be fully protected. So we take it very seriously. It is a critical component of a successful fraud, waste, and abuse hotline, as is the anonymity component. Because if someone is not comfortable and feels that they have an important tip, but they are not wanting to reveal their identity, there are ways to address that. And in the past, I have used a third-party system where you could report your reports could come in online, or you could call, and then there was a report key that you used to talk to the auditor's office back and forth, so you didn't have to reveal your identity. So we'll explore that more and the feasibility around that for the SANDAG's OIPA office. But it's a very important question, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak more about it.
Thank you. Any committee members' questions? Excellent.
Okay, I have 3 questions. So I'll start with the first one in relation to the whistleblower hotline and resources. So I am a certified fraud examiner. So with that, I am glad to hear that you're looking to amplify this resource for the public. And with that, I just want to know, have you considered the additional resources that you're going to need in order to publicize the whistleblower hotline outside of the administrative support that you will hopefully get expeditiously, but resources in terms of media support, social media rollouts, public education and training. If you have or if you haven't, I would suggest that in future presentations to the board or in public, that you would make those resources known so that all parties are aware of what it's going to take to roll that out. I've been on the side of rolling that out, and the publication and the communications piece is key. So I guess that was more of a comment as opposed to a question, but the second one does have a question component. It relates to the monthly reports for the fraud hotline.
Yep.
So if I understood correctly, the intent is to have one annual report that is a detailed report, and then a semi-annual report that's operational in nature, which basically would outline trending into the hotline. If I may suggest and ask, is it possible to consider actually doing the operational reports on a quarterly basis? I know how much work it goes into it, but on a quarterly basis, because one, you're trying to roll the whistleblower hotline out. And then 2, by doing it on a quarterly basis, it would appear as though this body, the public body, would be knowledgeable about what's actually trending regarding some of those fraud, waste, and abuse issues, and it can inform the work plan, which is iterative. So we may need to pivot the work plan during the course of the year and or sort of be in position to be fully knowledgeable about what was going on during the course of the year to inform the annual work plan. So is a quarterly report something that could be considered by your office? And I understand the resources that are currently available.
Chair, would you like me to respond or wait for the third? I think you said you had a third question.
Mhm.
You want me-
You can do this interactive as you want.
Great. All right. Thank you very much, Member Pickney Forrest. I hear your request, and I believe right now, because we're in a ramp up position, that when we bring, and I am suggesting that we bring the ops report in June, that we'll start to see what have we been able to accomplish as far as outreach? How have the numbers changed right there? If there's any trends, we'd be reporting out in June because of where we are operationally and organizationally. I think that getting somebody on board, being able to start to educate the employees in the midst of the SR 125 is budgeted to take a significant amount of my time. So I would like to revisit the conversation about the quarterly request in June. And if we have things come up right now, that I verbally report them out in my report to you if there's something significant. I don't want to say, because I use that word significant, right? But if there's a trend going on prior to the June, that would be incorporated in my monthly report out to you all.
I completely understand.
Thank you.
And then the last question is in regards to the SR 125 investigation. Just out of curiosity, is there any intention on using an external audit shop or audit body to assist with the investigation, to, you know, sort of assist with current resources and to make sure that, you know, this report can get out in a timely manner, considering all of the other projects that are ongoing in the office?
Absolutely. We are in the process right now of contracting with an external party to assist with the forensic accounting piece. And that much appreciation goes to Ray in funding that last time we were together.
You're welcome.
And then last question as a follow-up to that, the anticipated timeline, the hopeful timeline for bringing the external body on board?
Bringing the external party. Yeah, we are, hopefully we'll be in signature this week. And we are already having conversations about what, you know, getting prepared. We understand the sensitivity and the timeline of this. So we're evaluating both what we're doing internally and externally to figure out how quickly we can prepare a report, as well as considering if we would do two reports, do the forensic piece separately from the OIPA report. The forensics will still be under the direction of the OIPA, but we are taking everything into consideration to make sure that we get this information out as quickly as possible and understand that the first getting everything out within the first quarter is critical. So I'm budgeting to begin report writing by the beginning of February is our goal. I am an optimist. I just want you to know that. But we're going to do our best.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Other, Mr. Drucker.
Yeah, so on page 6 of 7, the bottom line total available hours, total hours budgeted 7,300. That's the, if you would add up all the hours in column 5, that's 7,300, correct?
Yes.
And the 1,800 hours for the special request, does that include outside hours or is that only
No, this
inside?
is OIPA staff only.
Okay, okay. And now if we go on to page 7 of 7, if we add up column 3 and 4, that's the available hours for audit?
The available direct audit service hours is 5,500. That is column 4.
Right. But what?
The 1,800 is embedded in the 2,720.
Okay, so if we add column 3 and 4, that should be close to 7,300 hours then, right?
it will be over the 7,300 hours because included, and next year I will call it out separately when I prepare the plan. But included right now in column 3 is strategic goals, indirect audit hours, as well as investigations. So some of the responsibilities I have administratively pull into the annual risk assessment, annual work plan, all those pieces are in there. So it's a little bit harder to tease out.
Okay, just wanted to understand how to
Yeah.
reconcile all that. So, you know, I think what you presented makes a whole lot of sense. I look forward, you know, as Shawnee has suggested, you know, on the one hand, I find the quarterly reports to be not significant enough to be able to see anything from my standpoint, but to have some more informal presentations probably makes sense so that we can get your emphasis as to what is happening rather than us having to read into it.
Any other comments? We're good. Okay, so just my input, which is from the perspective of, you know, I think that it's important for us to be able to understand the trending, particularly to committee member Pigney Forrest about the comments about the reports. I think that relative to providing a quarterly operational report, maybe once we have the new administrative support on hand, that would be a good target of when to start doing that. Just looking at the history of this, we did have what I think would be useful is while we're doing that is that we did have a period, you know, when we first started this, we had a certain number of reports and then, a certain number of issues filed, and then suddenly year 2 that went up by 4x. And then by year 3, it went down by 4x. So, if we do, relative to the concerns that have already been expressed, if we were to see a sudden surge, I would like it to be brought back before this board sooner rather than later so we could address that. Otherwise, I certainly trust your expertise and analysis of whether this is important enough, but, just from the perspective of knowing what the trends are, we don't want to get to the end of the year and say, oh, we've got a 3-year backlog now. And we didn't let you know before that. Sorry. And I wouldn't expect you would do that, but that would be an unfortunate outcome. So relative to that, the one request I would have is just that when you record and document what goes on here today, that you actually include that semi-annual operational update in the table that's defined goals and performance metrics, right? So the only thing that's listed right there now is the annual report, but at least get the semi-annual one operational update, and then just verbally know that there's this request to make sure the committee's aware of anything unusual that's going on and bring it back sooner than that if that were to happen. And then once you have this new support person on board, we can talk about what makes sense at that point, if that's good with the rest of the committee. If there are no other comments, I also believe this is an action item and would entertain a motion to accept these changes with the one change. Oh, Courtney.
Chair, I just want to add, there will be a couple cleanup items that are only in edit. We will make the addition if it's passed, like you said, with the that. There's also little things when it goes to the board, such as in the IDs names on page 6 of 7 that we want to clean up, like get ID out of there. Little things that are edits that have no impact. I just want to make sure that the committee is okay with us doing that.
Yes, I think as long as they're not notable from an operational perspective, I would think that would be fine. So David?
Move approval?
With the included change that I made, right?
Yes.
And do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. With that, please call for the vote. That motion passes unanimously with committee members Dorsey and Wong Nickerson absent. Well, maybe there's something to be said about 9 a.m. meetings. We seem to have moved through the agenda pretty quick, although we did defer one item that could require more topping. So our next Audit Committee meeting is scheduled for Friday, February 2nd at 9 a.m. Everybody have a great month and see you then. Thank you.